like an answer to the question, Judge.
You can't handle the truth!
I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Rubs the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Welcome to After Hours AM, the Crimnal Code, with your hosts, Joel Sturgis, Eric Olsen, and Dr. Clarissa Cole.
And good evening, everybody, and welcome to this edition of After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me, as always,
Eric Olsen and
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
And we are all here tonight. I know everyone's going, wait a minute, why are we getting Dr. Cole two weeks in a row? Well, that's because next week she'll be a no-show. She has real things to do.
I know. I have to do this whole thing called a day job, and they want me to show up and stuff.
That thing always gets in the way. It's horrible. It's horrible. And a really quick programming note before we move on is we have a lot of dedicated Podomatic listeners. And I would like to thank each and every one of you for listening and downloading and making us one of the juggernauts of radio shows at Podomatic. Well, that relationship has come to an end, and we are now moving everything over to a place called Spreaker. Well, Spreaker has really opened up their arms for us, and they're going to endear us with wonderful things that will ensure that your listening experience will be unhindered. Sorry about that. And so it will be much more streamlined because now you will have not only the podcast, but the iHeartRadio podcast right along with it under one roof. No having to run around. So everything will be right there. So getting back to the show, I mean, that's great news, guys. I mean, it's always hard to break up with somebody, and we've been with Podomatic for many, many years. But we got to a point to where, we outgrew Podomatic, and there's nothing wrong with that, and we needed to move on.
Yeah, well, my daughter and her boyfriend broke up this week.
Aww.
So that's a parallel.
It is.
Many were the tears shed. Many were the Kit Kats consumed between she and her silly friends.
At least
who literally created a nest.
A nest
in the I guess it's the equivalent of a king size bed.
A nest vacated
of what? When my son and his family went back to Finland, she just kind of took over that space.
But did you ever ask her why the nest?
Well, she's nesting.
Did you ever just say, "What's up with the nest? You bird? What's going on over there with those Kit Kat wrappers and the nest and all?"
Oh my God! I just went down there. Because it's the same room. It's kind of the back half of the room where we have all the band equipment and where we do the rehearsals and everything. So all that gets set up in the other half of the room, and then Chris and family, the twins, were back there, and now she is. I just cleaned it up. Oh my God, there were like 4 trash cans full of candy and crap wrappers.
Wow, man, that's a lot of consuming a child. Hey, at least they broke up near Halloween, so the candy was flowing.
It surely was, and apparently it is some sort of consoling device.
Clearly,
I guess better that than alcohol. Although,
well, that is true.
Who knows about that? Although I found no evidence of it. Yeah, so all these girls would show up.
Wow, it was like a breakup party.
9 and midnight at our back door and just kind of tiptoe on in and slink down to the basement.
And consume massive amounts of candy. That's how it's supposed to be done.
And while they complained about how the guy was never any good for her anyway.
Exactly.
I'm guessing so.
Yeah, that's how it always works. He was never good for you anyway. He was always a bad guy.
Hey, guys have their corollary to that.
You know
they
what?
They do. They play video games for hours and hours on end while occasionally talking about how bad the girl was and isn't this other girl hot. I've seen it.
Whenever I had a heartbreak going on, and this is in my early adult life. I had grain alcohol to ease the pain. And, the normal, go to the bar, your friends, and, they try to cheer you up. So I get it. It's much the same thing, rebounding after a breakup. But it's never hard, or it's never easy, rather, to get over a breakup. I don't care who you are.
Oh, God,
no,
especially at her age, too. Like, I remember. Man.
Go ahead. Yeah.
No, that was rough. That was probably one of the worst. I say this, and like I'm gonna have other ex-boyfriends that are like, "What the?" Like, no, my first breakup was probably one of my worst, one of my most gut wrenching, because it's maybe if it's your first love or something.
Yeah, you never forget your first.
You're young. I mean, it's the first time. This is really her first kind of like, real boyfriend. So I feel for her. I'm not.
So what happened?
Minimizing the pain. It's so funny. Her mother, who is rather, frankly, ruthless, had an experience when she was. I think she was 16. So Lily just turned 18. Really. So, well, not really. She did. And so Dawn was a couple years younger when she had her big breakup. But you know what she did in response to this being broken up with? She made a policy of, if there was ever even the remotest inkling that she might be broken up with, she would do the breaking up.
Wow, she didn't wait around at all. She
claims she has never been broken up with since.
Wow, so she'd hit the big red nuclear button right away. I said nuclear in homage of President Bush. But anyhow, that being said, what happened with the young love? I mean, did she ever tell you? Did she ever confide in you going, well, what it really...
did nothing but blubber in my direction for about 2 days every time I tried to talk to her. I guess let's see, what is today? Wednesday. Apparently this was Sunday, and Monday she was just a wreck and literally just laid around. Fortunately, they didn't have school. There was no school here because of a really crazy windstorm that came through. They called it right here in Aurora, microburst. Huge.
Wow.
I mean, trees with trunks
down everywhere,
maybe 2 feet thick, felled. And I mean, just nuts. Anyway, so no school. So she was able to kind of, lay around and wallow and
eat her candy,
self-pity and eat her candy and cry her eyes. I tried to talk to her a few times. She just looked in my direction and wailed and kind of burbled and
man. Spat. Well, that's horrible. I'm sorry to hear that about your daughter. It is always hard to get over a breakup. We've all done it. Most of us, anyway, have done it. I know I have. Clarissa, you have. Eric, I know you have. We've talked about on there before. Both of our breakups in the past.
Both directions.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah.
And sometimes you almost feel worse being the one doing the breakup.
Yeah.
I mean, if you have any conscience at all.
I tried to be creative when I did it. I tried to give them something to really remember. Like, guess who's breaking up today? Doo-da, doo-da. Or send someone over, like a singing gram. He's just not that into you. See ya. Stuff like that.
Or you deliver the room or house key.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
This is yours.
Now they do it, though, via text.
That is insane. I cannot even, I have had very, very, very few, not amicable breakups. Most of the time when I've had a breakup, we have remained, friends. So what via text? Hey, I'll talk to you sometime. That. Oh, it's crazy.
Yeah, we'll get together sometime. See you later. Via text.
Yeah. TTYL.
Yeah.
And apparently there's yet another stage or phase that is, it's even worse than that.
What?
Ghosting. You guys know about ghosting?
No. What is ghosting? Explain that to me.
You just... blow them off.
Disappear. You just totally disappear. But that's because most people communicate via text nowadays.
Yeah.
So I guess you just
don't answer.
I have a solution to that. Show up.
Well, that is true, but then the restraining order kicks in. If you show up and they don't want you there, that could really open up a can of worms there, Dr. Cole.
Oh, no. Don't stalk people. I'm saying
really? Okay.
that, Just talk like a normal human.
True.
Knock on the door, begin speaking.
Well, yes. Well, anyhow, that is exactly life of young people now is ghosting. I guess that's something new.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought it was something for tomorrow night's paranormal show. But no, in fact, that is something that actually does happen. You just don't talk to the person. Man, we're doing
the
that
coward's way out.
It really is.
And I must say, I do absolutely. I give both of Lily and the young man credit. They did meet face to face. They did talk. They worked it out. I mean, not to anyone's satisfaction, but they did meet and speak. And I think maybe the reason behind that, besides that they're, ultimately both, I think, nice, caring people, is that they were very good friends for quite a while before they became boyfriend, girlfriend.
Yeah.
She may be more upset about that part of it because, of course, she has friends, at least for now, of course, because she's hurt and she's upset.
Sure. Well, one thing I always brought with me in a breakup, because I always did them face to face, all joking aside, a nut cup. Every single time, man, I would go packing. Because you know what happens sometimes? Yeah, they don't take it so well.
Nut.
What kind of people are you dating?
I'm just saying, man. Hey, if there was even an inkling that she might react sideways and maybe go a little crazy, because they have a tendency to do that to me because I'm a hell of a catch. Anyhow, what I do is I wear protective garments.
Oh my goodness!
Just in case.
Yeah, I'm just coming from catching a softball game.
Hey, you only have to get kicked there once during a breakup that you want to start, taking precautions.
Oh, I know. Believe me.
So,
I know.
We got that going for us. And that. Well, anyhow, let's get to what people came for, I guess. And that, of course, is True Crime Headlines, brought to you by thecriminalcode.com. And the Criminal Code, like I've been talking about for months now, is your one-stop shop for all things true crime. Of course, the proprietor of that great site is our own Dr. Clarissa Cole. Not only does she do some great articles, a lot of great writing, but she also gives the doctor notes, gives you a real insight to the case and who the people were, really fleshes things out. So if you're interested in all true crime, which if you are listening to the show, you are, and you have
excuse me, Joel.
Yeah.
Male readers, your nutsack is safe.
And you're not, yes, now nut shot free. Don't worry about that. Get on over there.
Now. It wasn't before, but now
it is. Yes. 10% less nut shots now than there was before.
Freshly nut shot.
Yeah, it's nut shot free. Don't worry about your boys being in peril. So go on over there to the criminalcode.com. Yeah, exactly. So, Dr. Cole, I'm assuming no one had to wear a cup during any of these stories, but where would you like to begin?
You know what's really creepy about that whole lead-in? I actually just did a story on Eileen Vernos last night, so the whole nutshot thing maybe doesn't apply to that.
Man, yeah,
serial killer of John's, a prostitute. Anyway, no, this first story, I did want to get to it really quick. It is more serious in tone, but I wanted to get both of your opinions.
Sure.
Because it's something that I have dealt with a lot, and I honestly didn't expect it to come up in the public eye.
All right. What is that?
So a story came out on the Associated Press today about the Pentagon.
Okay.
That it is known for at least 2 decades, and believe me, people, it's longer than that, about failures to give military criminal history information to the FBI. So for those that don't know, the FBI is kind of the repository of criminal information on a person that happens while you're in the service.
Sure.
All right?
Yep.
So if you're in the service, either overseas or, stateside,
yep,
something goes awry, they put it in the FBI database. And let's say this same person who is now out of the military and lives in, say, Texas.
Yeah.
They go to purchase a firearm, something like that. Mm-hmm. Now, the FBI database is where you go. You go to your state databases and the FBI database. So that information should be in there. And every criminal that I talk to in state prison in California, if they did something in the service, it should be in that FBI database. And we do get that information. However, the vast majority of inmates that I talk to will say things like, I got a court-martial for X, Y, or Z. Mm-hmm. Is it in his records? No.
Why?
I'm hearing about it for the first time. It happens, I would say, 7 out of 10 guys.
Really?
It is not in file.
Well, why? Why is the lapse of reporting to the FBI happening?
I kind of liken it to the Catholic Church in some ways. Like, the military handles their own stuff, and they feel like it's handled, and then they don't report it.
No,
they don't report it. And especially in domestic violence cases.
I could see that. I could definitely see that happening, and they figure they dealt with it in-house.
Right.
There's no need to
and
go
why
outside.
Ruin the guy's life once he gets out of the service? I think there's a lot of sympathy there.
That there could be a lot of that as well. But this individual that you're speaking of, he decided he was going to shoot up a church. Devin Kelly, am I correct? Is the guy's name?
Killed 26 people,
including an 18-year-old or 18-month infant. I mean, come on.
It just keeps getting
it does, because normally gunmen.
What's left?
I mean, how often do gunmen truly target children, Clarissa?
It's very rare unless it is sort of a mass shooting type case like this. Like, that's what's very interesting in a sick way, obviously, of some of these mass shooters is that a lot of them are completely indiscriminate when it comes to men, women, children. But he was close up, and that is abnormal.
Yeah, that is abnormal.
You don't see that very often.
Because generally speaking, I would think that being in such close proximity to the victims, he would not fire on an infant if he has any honor at all.
Yes, you would think that he wouldn't. And so that did shock me. But the thing that didn't shock me, I guess, is the whole idea that he had this criminal history in the Air Force and nobody knew about it. What is going on out there? And like domestic violence, they're finding is the strongest link to these mass shooters.
Oh, I believe it. Because if it happens at home, it happens out in public. Generally speaking, it starts somewhere.
And it's a very like people that commit domestic violence tend to have very controlling, perfectionistic personalities.
Yeah.
So
I guess you're right. When you think about it, and then after a shooting happens, and they talk about the person, and they kind of talk about that personality being very. It's
always that type. Yeah, I mean, like Charles Whitman.
Yeah.
He had a very perfectionistic personality. Was also a domestic abuser, and so that's coming. And there's some evidence too that the Las Vegas shooter also, even though it wasn't reported properly, I guess everybody said that he had that domestic abuser personality, that the relationship between he and his living girlfriend was anything but happy. He was extremely controlling and emotionally abusive, if nothing else. So it doesn't surprise me. But what is so sad to me is that, I see this all the time with the inmates I talk to and read about. They report it themselves. Oh, yeah, I was court-martialed. Why isn't it in their file 7 times out of 10? And now the Pentagon is being forced to acknowledge that they don't do it on a routine basis. And they said, it maybe doesn't get reported. Guess what? It's routine that it doesn't.
Yeah.
They're downplaying it.
I could see that. Good old boy system,
Yeah, exactly. Like the Catholic Church.
Yeah. Yeah. And so then this overlook cost all these people their lives.
Yeah. I mean, is that how you see it then? That it could have been prevented, do you think?
I think,
completely.
You can get guns in a variety of different ways. It doesn't mean you don't necessarily have to go to the store and buy one. You can get one private party, which requires no background check.
Right.
Anyone can walk up
Texas,
and say...
it's probably easier.
Yeah, and we have gun shows. You could go buy guns all day at gun shows and with no background check. So, there's a lot of different ways. Could have been prevented. I think that the military should have seen this ticking time bomb in their own workup on him and maybe intervened far before this even would have been a problem.
He got a dishonor, and that to me that is how the military intervenes, or I've seen it. I mean, literally hundreds of times now. The way the military intervenes is a dishonorable discharge, not our problem.
Yep, get out of here. You get no veterans benefits. Get out of here. Leave us alone. We don't even know who you are.
Exactly. It's just not our problem.
Yep, exactly. They passed it off to the citizens or the public at large to clean up that mess.
Yeah.
That's sad. Truly sad state of affairs.
Excuse me. Yeah, I had read that, of course, and was hearing about it and was pretty stunned by it. But Clarissa, your presentation, I had not gone deeply enough into it. I didn't realize that this was literally, benign, and it is not benign neglect. I mean, that this is semi-intentional. That I didn't realize. I thought it was a clerical issue, but you're telling me. I think the analogy with the Catholic Church is very apt, very closing ranks, let nothing be said, let nothing escape, let outsiders don't count.
Okay, right? But why don't they... Now, Eric, I don't mean to cut you off at all, but why aren't they charging the people for not reporting this? Why aren't they charging them with a crime?
Oh, I mean, I bet that they would shield them completely because, to be quite honest, I've known people in the military that have been told specifically they've been ordered not to enter it into the database before. They've been told not to enter it into the FBI database because this person's got a promising career. He doesn't need that.
Yeah.
They handle it. He gets a minor court martial, and then so I guess I kind of resent the fact that the Pentagon and other places are sort of putting it out there as though it was an innocent error. This is standard practice for the military, and I think it's about time they acknowledge that.
Exactly. I'm sorry, Eric. Go right ahead. I know you're getting to a great point, but it just popped in my head. Shouldn't the people that are dropping the ball on this face some type of repercussions?
Well, I'm just saying that it's even more negative and astonishing to me that this is something that is at least, somewhat on purpose. And yes, clearly this needs to be addressed. What amazes me, and again, I've said this many, many times, you guys know it, any regular listeners know it, I am not gun-oriented. I don't pretend to be. I have fired guns 10 times or less in my entire life, I am certain, and I don't even remember the last time, to be honest. And we don't have them in the house, etc. Didn't grow up with it. Parents didn't have them. Grandparents didn't have them. But it seems to me, it sounds like, if you're on the outside looking in, and I hear about this too, because remember, my son, lives in Finland, and his wife is Finnish, and her family's Finnish. So, I talk to them, and they ask me questions, and I don't always know the answer, but from the kind of the outside or third party looking in, it seems like anything that touches upon, and I'm not going to say right, I'm going to say the ability of essentially anyone under any circumstances in the United States to get a hold of firearms is at least partially thwarted. It's like at every turn, something could happen to make it more, to make it easier than it is supposed to be, than it's legally supposed to be, or that politicians mouth that it's supposed to be. Yeah. Probably even the NRA. Yeah. Says that it's supposed to be. It's easier than that. So my question is, why is that? Why do we err on the side of making it easy for people to get guns, and any kind of gun, up to and including apparently, convertible semi-automatics? I just heard on the radio yesterday, after a very brief, it hasn't been long, moratorium, those, what are the stocks that make it automatic?
Bump stock.
The bump stocks are coming back.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. They are coming back because it does not make it into a fully automatic weapon. That was the argument. So they are coming back.
They were voluntarily, taken off the shelves for this period, coming right back.
Just in time for Christmas.
Yeah, really, exactly. So my point is, and it's as much a question, I guess, as it is a point. Why is our society like that? Why at every possible turn do we find a way to make it easier than it's supposed to be? And it's already easy. It's supposed to be easy. And why is it even easier than that?
Yeah, and you're referring to new gun sales. A lot of what you're talking about is people going to the store and buying a new gun. Right. Eric, the genie is out of the bottle. There are so many guns in this country. Oh, my Lord. There is enough guns in this country to every man, woman, and child to own, 4 or 5 of them.
Oh, yeah, something like that's crazy.
And it's absurd, let's face it.
But okay, now that being said, even if you had someone that had a good idea to get all the guns off the street, it's never going to happen. No. Never going to happen. So it's just not going to happen. There's always going to be the people that are not going to give up their guns. There's always going to be that whole black market of guns. All you got to do is make the black market boost their prices and make things even that more sought after.
Right. So
really, it's a slippery slope. On one hand, we have, okay, how can we stop people like him or criminals from getting guns? Oh, I know. Let's go to the gun shops and make it harder for them to buy new guns. Well, the old guns, you can walk up to anybody in most states and buy it without even showing your ID. Eric, I mean, you just walk up there and say, hey, I like your gun. How much you want for it? $500. Well, here's $500. That's literally how easy it is.
I know, it's crazy. And like when in the states where it is more restrictive, like in California, it is not that easy. It's not like going to a gun show in, say, maybe Montana, someplace like that.
Yeah.
You do have to show ID and there's all this other stuff going on. Well, they just drive to a different state.
Well, that's all. They just go to Nevada, or they
it's
go
not
to,
difficult.
They go to Arizona or they go to, Texas if they really want a road trip. Mm-hmm. But the thing of it is who stopped the shooter? Who ended up stopping the shooter at the end of the day?
A legal gun owner.
Guy with a gun.
Yep.
So it's that, again, it's the tool. I mean, it's not the tool, it's the intent.
Yeah.
A lot of it, am I right, Clarissa? It's the intent, not the tool.
I agree that it is. I do think, though, that there's definitely points to be made on both sides, because in any sort of violence, including suicide, right, you take away the means that the person has. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if somebody wants to hang themselves, you take away all the rope. That sort of thing.
It comes down to, do you want to be shot or stabbed?
That's the thing, though. I think a lot of these people, if it came to, not this guy, clearly, all right, let me make that clear. A lot of the shooters that we've had don't want to be in close quarters with their victims, and typically are not. I mean, you look at Charles Whitman, you look at Stephen Paddock, very far away, extremely far away. If they had to have close-up violence, I doubt that it would have happened.
Well, it's funny because when they were talking about right after the Las Vegas shooting, they had somebody from the Crime Bureau on there, and they said, you think guns are bad? Look up the amount of stabbings we have in this country a year.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. There's so much fun. I mean, people don't have unless you actually work in the corrections system in some meaningful capacity where you're really looking. Now, I know other people that work in corrections that don't read the charts don't know the rap sheets. I mean, they work in maybe education, but there's people even that work in the corrections system and I love that they work in corrections. My hat's off to them, but honestly, a lot of them say, I don't want to know.
Well, I just moseyed.
I don't want to know.
Yeah, I just moseyed on over to the FBI Crime Bureau, and it says here's an article here talking about guns versus knives. Do you guys realize, according to the FBI right here, more than 3 times the people are stabbed and shot in the United States?
I believe that. I see much more hand-to-hand violence than I do.
Yeah, I never would have thought that.
I mean, anger is an issue in America, just in general.
Yeah, for every 548 shootings, there's 1,573 stabbings.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
I'm not surprised. Yeah.
I am.
Take that and look at alcohol-related deaths.
Yeah.
I mean, you want to get really crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
because, when the FBI was on, they're going, well, this is horrible. It's a horrible thing. If we take away the guns, then we only have knives to contend with, and that means we have to raid every kitchen in America.
It does get down to political arguments, and I understand that. I mean, like, if you really want to get political, seriously, we could talk about alcohol. I mean,
exactly.
The one drug linked to the most violence that I have ever seen in any correctional scenario. All the other drugs combined, I'm talking cocaine, PCP, crack, marijuana, a million different drugs, do not come close to alcohol.
No, exactly.
Nothing.
Absolutely. Alcohol has been
it's the number one.
It is by far the number one. And, again, I think it speaks to the intent of the weapon user, like you're saying. But then again, like you said, they don't like that close-up contact. That's why the gun is chosen. So we are far from figuring this out. All I know is we have to figure our way to go on a break. We come back, more your most, I almost said most haunted headlines. Sorry about that, folks. Your true crime headlines will come back right after this. After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. Will be right back after a word from these sponsors.
Green light. Hey girl, school zone. I'm getting hungry. Car changing lanes. You want to meet me for pizza? Stop sign. Intersection clear. Yeah, street. Pizza sounds good. Ballin Street? Girlin Street!
It's hard to concentrate on two things at once, like texting and driving. Stop the text, stop the wrecks. How will you stop texting and driving? Tell us at stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
This is Jen McGowan, founder of Wayward Souls Promotions, a company dedicated to helping individuals, teams, radio shows, and others that are seeking exposure for their individual events, conventions, and shows. We offer a wide variety of advertising, such as web-based article, social media posts, podcast advertisement, and so on. Contact us at paranormalpromotion@gmail.com. Visit us on Facebook at Wayward Souls Promotions, and visit our website at www.waywardsoulspromotions.com.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. Everybody, I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me,
Eric Olsen and
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
And we're going to get right back into your true crime headlines. Anything you want to finish up with that thought, Clarissa, before we move on with the violence and the way things are in America?
Did we lose Clarissa?
I'm back.
You are back. Okay, sorry about that. Must have been a glitch in the system. Any final thoughts on just the general climate of violence in America you'd like to just maybe talk on just for a second?
I mean, Eric, do you want to finish the thought that you were kind of talking about in the break? Because I'm really curious now.
Yeah, what we were kind of talking about as we were going into the break, we were getting into knives. And so it's not just guns. It's not just the tool. Knives are dangerous and people use them even more than guns, rather remarkably more here in the U.S. So there's something going on in the U.S. It's just the level of violence.
Anger.
And anger seems to be so much higher. Yeah. And as I was saying earlier, my son just left. They were here a couple weeks, he and his wife and their 1-year-old twins. And, of course, it was amazing and wonderful, and it was so hard to see them go. And everyone's, pulling them aside and, are you ever going to live here? Are you going to ever move? And ultimately, the bottom line is this. He doesn't bring up guns. He doesn't bring up, the current political climate or anything like that. He says, in Scandinavia, not just Finland, Scandinavia in general, children are not only allowed, but are encouraged to spend all the time that they want. I mean, when they're not in school or doing something specific. Yeah. Outdoors, exploring, roaming, and no one worries about them or their safety. And he said, I want that for my children. I want them to be able to go out and ride their bikes into town, walk, go explore, meet new people, meet adults, meet kids, just feel free in the world and us not have to be afraid. And I thought, wow, that really is a pretty amazing thing. And it's something that used to be here, at least to a certain extent. I mean, when I was a kid, of course, obviously depends on where you are in your neighborhood and who your neighbors are. many, many, many variables. But when I was a kid in Southern California, I could go where I wanted. I didn't feel in danger. I could ride my bike. I could walk down the street. I could, we'd go into town. We'd ride our bikes. We'd go on these long, I'm talking 10, 11, 12 years old. We'd ride our bikes all the way down to San Pedro. I'm talking, 5 miles away or something, and go to the bowling alley or do something. And I don't know how worried my parents were, but I don't think they were very worried because they let us do it. It wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
And can you imagine that these days?
No. I couldn't. And
even you in small town northern Minnesota, Joel.
Well, it's a little bit different up here. Everyone knows each other. I mean, we all
and I used to do
have
it
a
too
vested
in
interest.
Wisconsin. Yeah.
We all know each other though. Everybody in this town knows each other. We all know who our kids are. It's a little less frightening because my 11-year-old, he'll be gone sometimes to almost nightfall playing with his friends. But we know exactly
everybody
where he
knew
is.
Ed Gein too.
Well, this is true. But they don't. They never leave our neighborhood. They never leave our neighborhood. It's not like they're 5 miles away, 10 miles away. They're just up the street. But that being said, in small town, you still have that in a lot of ways. That you don't. When we're the bigger city, you don't have that luxury. But in a small town, generally speaking, I can't speak for everyone's experience. But in my experience, a little more freedom in your smaller towns because there's more of everyone knows everyone unless you're an Ed Gein, and we know who the weirdos are here. We know who to veer away from. You see what I'm saying? But evidently Ed Gein, they didn't realize he was really that weird. But anyhow, I was the same way though, Eric. I'd be out dusk till dawn, man. I mean not dusk till dawn, but be out as soon as the sun was shining. I was gone, man, until the sun set. I was out doing my thing.
Yeah, and of course, especially in the summer, or during breaks and in better weather and all that.
Yeah.
The point is, even more than when I was a kid, based on it's a cultural thing, and it's not that even that they're
it's
allowed
the boogeyman that's going to get
they're
you.
Encouraged to do it.
Yeah.
They want them out there, and out and exploring, and the environment, is safe enough that it's not an issue, and people don't worry about it.
But here we have the boogeyman. That one's worried about the boogeyman.
I know.
The boogeyman might get you.
And they're not. They're worried for good cause. I mean, I live now, in a upper middle class suburb of a, not huge, but I suppose upper middle class city in terms of size, right? So we're way out there, 25, 30 probably miles from downtown. It's certainly upper middle class, but I wouldn't have a young kid just roaming anywhere. Now, like you're saying, Joel, if they're in the immediate neighborhood, a block in either direction, and we know where they're going, that's fine. And my kids are older now, so, they certainly have a lot more latitude. But when you're talking about little kids, as I say, it's a cultural value, and that they go out and explore, and we're afraid of that.
Well,
we're
that's
not
because
that. We're afraid of it.
In my opinion, and maybe Dr. Cole can correct me, we've cultivated a culture of fear.
Oh, yeah. We definitely have. I mean, and very specifically in America, I mean, part of it is reactionary to what has happened here.
Yes.
We hear about a serial killer. Everybody freaks out across the whole nation, and things don't go back to normal. And the Adam Walsh case changed things. Like, there were so many cases that got so much publicity that it just changed our society in such a way, and our news cycle too.
But think about this.
Very, very fear-based.
But think about this. The Las Vegas shooter happened, right? And it was hot news for like a week. And that was it. I mean, it really, we have these huge moments in time like the shooting that happened, and it's hot for maybe a week, and then we forget about it. We move on to whatever's hot next.
Well, that's the problem. We've had so many of these incidents lately. Mm-hmm. It's just one replaces the next, one more awful thing. We've had these... we've literally had 3 mass shootings in the last few weeks.
I'm going to ask Dr. Cole maybe a hot button question. So get ready, Dr. Cole. More guns or less guns? What should we have in society? In the right hands, speaking, of course.
God, and this is a hot button question. And to be quite honest, my answer even just a few months ago would have been different than it is today.
Okay. And I respect your
honest.
answer either way, because, no one has the correct, quote unquote, correct silver bullet for this problem.
Exactly right. I would say less, given what's going on in this country and the fact that personal responsibility seems to be at an all-time low. I'd say less.
Okay, so do you
and
believe...
I would not have said that several months ago.
So do you believe that the only people that should own firearms are people with badges? Because Hitler...
No, I've never believed that.
Because, of course, whenever I say that, whenever I put that question out there, people always hit me with this. Yeah, Hitler did that too.
Yeah, no, and I know what people are saying. It's, I don't think that it should be just restricted to law enforcement, and I probably will never feel that way. But I do think gun laws need to change. I think that there need to be better checks. There needs to be better training.
Yeah, there should be a balance here. Responsible gun ownership is a wonderful, beautiful thing when it's done correctly, but when people have guns that shouldn't have guns, we see the result is the bad part. And we're not just talking about your hunting rifle here, because quite honestly, a lever action rifle, you're never going to see anyone go and, on a rampage with one of those. But it's assault rifles. It really is. I mean, let's bring the gorilla up for a minute out of the corner, because no one seems to really want to tackle this. We didn't have this at a mass level until the assault rifle became so accessible to everybody.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's what it seems that blew up, right, Eric?
Yeah, I mean, that's what I think. But where's Eric? Where'd Eric go?
Well, yes, I'm here. I'm trying to not impose my, much more anti-gun perspective. I've actually, in some ways, moved closer to the center, because I do see value. And I do understand, certainly at least from the conceptual standpoint, that sure, there is always the possibility, somehow, some way, that the government, would try to impose some sort of unreasonable, irrational constraints upon us. Always possible. You never know. Perhaps slightly more likely would be some sort of invasion, from elsewhere. Who knows? It could be freaking aliens.
Yeah, we just
right?
had a great comment pop up by one of our law enforcement friends in the Facebook group. And thanks again, guys, for weighing in on all this kind of stuff. You guys always bring in such great responses to our questions. And he says this. He says, guns are a beautiful and wonderful thing, essential to our society. It's one of the things, cornerstones of America, was founded on, and actually gun ownership predates the United States by several hundred years. That being said, when things do happen in communities and people need to act, it's not with harsh words or rocks, it's with a gun. I thank God that there was a brave soul to stop the shooting before it got any worse. That being said, we also have to rely upon our citizens to police themselves. We cannot always be there all the time. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak on this.
And that's kind of what I was trying to say. Love that. Whoever wrote that, I love that. That's kind of the point that I was trying to make when we were on break, is that the times that I have been in Europe, I've noticed that the trust for each other in this society is so much greater than it is here.
Yeah.
And that is something systemic in America that we have to address. I mean, because that, I think, is the biggest piece of this. We have no trust for each other, not really. And we need to start looking at each other as allies instead of enemies.
It's a very divisive, society.
What this reminds me of, and part of it is, we just watched it last night. This whole season, and I've said this before, of American Horror Story Cult addresses many of these issues, and it's really quite horrifying. In some ways, this is the best and the worst season because it's by far the most realistic. There's nothing supernatural in it at all. Some of it's a bit far-fetched, and they're recreating last night the Manson murders. Oh my God, that was beyond horrifying. I mean, really, it was. I couldn't look. I couldn't watch. My wife and I both have pillows over our eyes, and the sound was bad enough. But the point they're making is they have a cult figure played by Evan Peters. He's done a really kind of an amazing job of it, and he is buying into it's ultimately a very fascist type approach, and it's a fear-based approach. And his entire approach, his whole principle is the more fear I can create in society, and he's going around murdering people, as a means to an end. But the more fear that he can create, then the more pliant and dependent people become on government and leaders, on strongmen. And so it's really been very interesting to see how it plays out. And they're not really tying it to any particular political point of view. It's more the notion of cult-like behavior, charismatic leaders. How do they do what they do? Why do they do what they do? And a lot of this comes up, and we are seeing an awful lot of this right now in our country. So not only is it fear, not only is it mistrust, but we seem to see each other not as fellow citizens, fellow human beings, people to look out for, be favorably disposed toward, but as receptacles for our anger.
Yeah, I think you're right. We had another great comment by Mark B. He just popped up and he says, this is an open question for all three of you. Do you believe that if everybody had the potential to be armed, would it stop mass shootings? Because would the shooters stop and think, wow, I don't know who's packing and who's not?
I don't think so.
No,
because
I don't
most
think
of
so
them don't expect to survive, and they just want to kill as many people as they possibly can.
Most of them do it from a distance as well. Do I think it would stop other types of crime though? Yes, I do.
Yeah,
I
get the thinking
right from the horse's mouth on that.
Yeah, I get the thinking behind it. I really do. And yeah, I mean, rationale would say, hey, if everyone's packing a gun, the bad guy wouldn't bring a gun. But like you said, it's usually from a distance, and they're using weapons that far outpower any conventional pistol you might be packing.
Yeah, exactly. And they've been, look at the Las Vegas one. Look at the preparation that went into it, the time that went into it. Sure. They're ultimately so much more prepared than the average citizen, even the trained citizens. Even the cops in that scenario were far out of their depth, not because they weren't prepared, but because he had done so much preparation. So I don't think it would stop mass shootings. I do think it would hinder some other types of crimes.
Like, for instance?
There's a lot of people that have told me, a lot of criminals that have told me that breaking and entering into an occupied residence, for instance. If they had thought the residents had been packing, they would not have gone into that house.
I got a story for you guys. I was broken into many years ago. And the guy was in my house. I was sleeping. At that point, I was working. Normally, I worked the night shift. I wasn't working. I happened to be off. So this guy kind of looked, obviously, to find out my patterns and assuming I was at work. So he breaks into my house, and I hear him in my kitchen, in my living room. I hear the guy. So I reach over, and I grab, at this time, no children again. I grab my Mossberg 12-gauge shotgun, sneak up behind him, and rack that action. Right behind him. The man urinated himself.
Yep.
And I said, you're dead. Oh my God, call the cops. He was thanking the police that showed up. He's like, that guy's crazy. But really, I had that opportunity to sneak up on it. A lot of people don't have that opportunity to do that because they're taken by complete surprise and they don't have what I had accessible at the moment, but that could have gone really sideways really quickly had he got the drop on me.
Oh yeah, and the vast majority of citizens are not that lucky. Especially unfortunately, the statistics show, especially women, if we're not trained well and we hesitate, the guns are typically used against us. So that's why I would like to see a lot of things change when it comes to firearms, specifically training. Because you need it. Don't fool yourself into thinking that just because you have a firearm that you're safer, because that's not what any of the numbers show. The numbers show that if a woman that is being broken into introduces a gun into the situation and the person that is doing the breaking in doesn't have a weapon, they up the violence.
You know, I took a training course a few years ago with a handgun training course. Quick draw, how to use it, what it's like, you know, and really, realistically, you have only about 2 seconds to draw your weapon and plus aim. That's it. You have someone running at you from 15, 20 feet away. That's it. That's all you have.
Oh, less than two. Like the training course that I went through was very rigorous.
Like nothing.
It's nothing.
Yeah, it's really nothing. So not only do you have to pull that weapon, but then you have to get your sight picture and then fire. It's just very, very difficult. So generally speaking, yeah, I could see where guns are used on people that have the guns. They grab them and they either pistol whip them or they shoot them outright.
Right, because they're not afraid to use them.
Yes. The other unstated part of this is, and I'm not looking at the statistics, but I've seen it many times in editorials and essays and whatnot, but the most likely victim of a gun within the home is someone else within the home.
Generally speaking, yeah. I mean, you know.
So, I mean, I know I have a bad temper, and at my age, it's not nearly as bad as it used to be, just because it can't be, right? Yeah. Over time, you just gotta wear it down, or you're gonna be in jail, right, or dead, or both.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I'm better. I'm a lot better than I used to be, but I still have a bad temper, and I don't want to think this, but in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, yeah, under absolutely, a perfect storm of the worst circumstances, I could see someone in this household flipping out to that degree and shooting someone. Mm-hmm. And my God, even if they didn't kill him, how would they feel for the rest of their lives?
Well, see, now, on the other hand, I own guns, and I'm a responsible gun owner. They're all locked up, trigger locks, the whole bit. Even though they're in a safe, there's a trigger lock on it. Just because I got little kids, you just never know. They're crazy that way. Never have I thought, Eric, of grabbing one of my firearms and using it with one of my family members. Never have I thought about using it in any ill manner way. But yes, I get where you're coming from. Sometimes, heat of the moment. You know what I mean? I get it. And
well, I'm talking about accidents too, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Accidents are huge.
So someone comes in late, not what you were anticipating. Maybe you're still, you're a new gun owner. You're itchy. You're antsy. You're uncertain. You grab it. You go down there. Maybe you don't even mean to use it. Right? You're aiming it. You're accidents and. Even more than the temper issue is something that would really concern me.
But that's can I just bring up a point really quickly about that though? Like I think that's where, because before I had the gun training that I have, I was thinking the exact same thing, all of those same things. And after I had the gun training and hours and hours and hours and hours of experience with a gun, I realize now that would never happen. It wouldn't happen, because if I am drawing a weapon, I intend to use it imminently.
Yep.
I am not drawing it as a threat. I am not drawing it to speak.
It's not a showpiece.
You only draw it if you intend to use it immediately afterwards. Because of all the training I've had. So am I worried about doing that? An accident? No, I'm not. And after getting a vast respect for firearms, after getting all the experience I have, I'm never worried that I would be angry and use one either, because I have such a respect for them now.
Yeah. Yeah, I went through a lot of training as well. Just full disclosure, I have a conceal and carry permit. And I took extensive training with weapons training. And in fact, I did a lot of military training as well. I grew up in a big gun household, as all the listeners know. But yeah, you're right. I mean, you know what? It's like when I was going through my training, they said, if you're going to pull the gun, you better use the gun. Mm-hmm. It's not for speaking. It's not a speech. It's not anything. If you're pulling
it's not a warning. If you have one and you fire a warning shot, you haven't been trained.
It's like my instructor said, dead men don't tell tales.
Well, you can't, because the 20-yard gap, where it takes less than 2 seconds for somebody to close it if they're running at you with a knife, you don't have time. You should never be drawing the gun unless you intend to use it. And I was trained by a Marine. It was like, he made me cry. It was horrible. But It was good. It was,
and the reason why he said that is because a lot of people, they'll shoot the bad guy, wing the bad guy, never try to wing him. Always center mass, but they'll wing the bad guy and the bad guy will sue him.
And by the way, you have to keep shooting until they drop.
Yep.
You don't just shoot it and then stop. You're supposed to keep going until they drop it. I mean, I feel like this is training that everybody should get because, like I said, I learned respect for it. It's not just that, I want to use a gun. I didn't want to use a gun. I didn't even want to do it.
Well, I carry a 45 ACP, so generally it's only
Oh my
one
God,
shot.
that's crazy. I carry one that the grip fits really well in my hand. I'm not going to tell people
Here we
what
are
it
talking
is,
about guns and stuff like that. I
Yeah.
carry a 1911 Colt, 45 ACP.
Oh, that's a nice.
That-
We just disintegrated into talking weapons, and Eric is. I'm sorry.
I know.
Eric.
We're sorry. I'm sorry for the listener that's listening to all this because we did not want to turn this into a gun debate. Nor is it. We're all just trying to figure out why the heck things have gone so sideways with everything that's been going on. I think we really, all of us, need to have a better understanding of not only guns but of ourselves and society, and where that all fits together and what intersections it fits in. Because guns are not inherently evil. It's the person behind the trigger. At least that's what I was taught.
Well, and not just that, but I think we need to learn basic respect for each other in this society. Like, I know we have a very divisive president. Things have gotten very divisive in this country, but like the people that I work with, the people that I'm around, okay, can I tell you about a weird example this weekend?
Absolutely.
In Yuba City, the biggest Sikh festival in the entire United States happens.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Okay, so Indians, Sikh Indians, come here from all over the United States. I'm talking 50,000 or more.
That's a lot.
And
that's a good turnout.
it is a lot, and they're all wearing traditional garb. And I'm sorry, I don't know the words for everything yet. I'm learning. And so the entire town is just overrun with people wearing the traditional like turban, head dresses, and the women wearing the long, beautiful sari type outfits. And you would think that being in somewhat Northern California, which is a little bit more redneck-ish, that people would be very worried about it because, I'm sorry, they're the people that often get called names and get mistaken for terrorists when they go out. I mean, that's the typical thing. And I went out to this festival, and it was the most beautiful, wonderful, awesome thing of these cultures meshing, where there were black people, white people, Sikh people. And I mean, it can be done. Yeah, I swear.
Oh, it can be. But do you guys think, both of you, just open question, both of you, do you think that we have a real problem with value of life in this country? Do you think that we don't really value life like we once did?
I think there's a disconnect, and we've talked about this many times. I think the internet, social media, the availability of automatic weapons, all these things contribute to a depersonalization, and that absolutely leads to a devaluing of life, or at least if it isn't devaluing, it's a lessening of the reality of life. It's like life is less real than it used to be because people are using these mitigating tools, social media, the internet, and when someone decides they want to kill as many people as possible, one way or another, they are able to essentially get their hands on at least, the equivalent of automatic weapons. And as Clarissa's been saying, throughout the show, one of the defining characteristics of this, certainly not the latest, not the church shooting, but in Vegas and many of these other mass shootings, is that they're occurring at quite a distance.
Yeah,
so,
they are. Yeah,
we're not talking about really face-to-face, eye-to-eye combat. You're talking about, it's almost like a drone mentality, right?
Yeah.
Where the people aren't real anymore. It's like a game. It's a video game. It's too abstract.
Exactly.
I think that's ultimately the problem.
Yeah.
Human life right now is just too abstract for a really
agree.
Significant portion of the population.
Yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, we have to run a break, and we'll be right back with Eric Rickstad. He wrote the great book, The Names of the Dead Girls. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back right after this. After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. We'll be right back after a word from these sponsors.
Ranger Station, Ranger speaking.
Yeah, hi. I'd like to report a bear sighting.
Location.
My backyard.
Oh, your backyard. Try telling a bear that.
I did, and this bear talked back.
Talking bear, that's rich.
No, wait, it was Smokey Bear.
Smokey? Why didn't you say so?
I did say so.
Continue.
I was burning yard waste.
Oh, boy.
He told me to burn legally and responsibly, and to remember that if it's too hot to touch, it's too hot to leave.
And as always, he's right. You know, 9 out of 10 wildfires are caused by humans. That means 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented.
Yeah, I know that now.
Thanks to me.
Actually, thanks to Smokey.
As usual, the talking bear gets all the credit. Get your Smokey on. Always burn responsibly and contact your local fire department for open burning regulations. Because 9 out of 10 wildfires can be prevented. Brought to you by Smokey Bear, the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council. Learn more at smokeybear.com.
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Hi, Tom Bodette. If you can hear me, then you have an internet connection, which means you can do cool things online, like listen to streaming radio, obviously, or watch a video of a monkey washing a cat. Let your freak flag fly. Or you can book a room at a great price at Motel6.com. Isn't the internet wonderful? Everything you want right at your fingertips, and whoa, did not need to see that. I'm Tom Bodette for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
This is Jen McGowan, founder of Wayward Souls Promotions, a company dedicated to helping individuals, teams, radio shows, and others that are seeking exposure for their individual events, conventions, and shows. We offer a wide variety of advertising, such as web-based article, social media posts, podcast advertisement, and so on. Contact us at paranormalpromotion@gmail.com, visit us on Facebook at Wayward Souls Promotions, and visit our website at www.waywardsoulspromotions.com.
Excuse me. Thousands of cancer patients can't afford a place to stay when the best treatment is far from home. A room shouldn't be the difference between life and death. Let's make sure that everyone who needs a room gets one. Let's make some noise. Let's help the American Cancer Society finish the fight.
Text ROOM to 41518 to donate $10. Only in the forest can you see this. But nothing beats the moment you see that.
Cool!
That's your child's eyes opening up to a world of possibilities.
There are some moments only the forest can inspire. Find yours at discovertheforest.org. Learn about forests near you and discover cool things to do when you go. And you might just see this. Visit discovertheforest.org. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me,
Eric Olsen and
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
And tonight we have a really, really great show on tap. Well, they're all great, let's just be honest. Well, some better than others, and this is going to be in that one better than others category because I am really excited to speak with our next guest. Eric.
Yes.
Olsen. Who are we talking with tonight?
Oh, you're asking me.
I am asking you.
Well, I'm not going to tell you yet, but I am going to tell you about the names of dead girls. In a remote northern Vermont town, college student Rachel Rath is being watched.
Well,
she can feel the stranger's eyes on her, relentless and possessive, and she's sure that the man watching her is the same man who killed her mother and father years ago. Ned Preacher, serial rapist and murderer who gamed the system to get a light sentence. Now he's free. Check out, literally, this is the opening paragraph of the book. If this does not tingle your wingle, you're not human. The winter of imprisonment is over. freedom his again after years of forced dormancy. Freedom that tastes bright and metallic like a drop of virgin's blood on the tip of the tongue. Freedom, the sight irresistible like the first flourish of pale young female flesh in spring. Freedom, the sound musical like the simper of the meek begging release from the mighty. Freedom, the odor intoxicating like that of sweat shimmering off the skin of the terrified. Freedom, the feel intimate like fingernails of the desperate raking runnels in the flesh of his face. He watches his head bowed, hat pulled tight to his brow, cracks his back and stretches his arm above his head, taking in the expanse of his domain. Emperor, Lord. With that, I will stop. If that is opening gold, my friends. All right, New York Times, USA Today, best-selling author Eric Rickstad delivers another Canaan crime novel, once again featuring detectives Frank Rath and Sonia Test as they track a depraved killer through rural Vermont. Plenty more description. We won't go into it all because we're going to be talking about that. Who is Eric Rickstad, you might ask? He is the New York Times, USA Today, and international best-selling author of The Silent Girls, Lie in Wait, and Reap, novels heralded as intelligent and profound, dark, disturbing, and heartbreaking. I would add, literary. Rickstad has always had a taste for the darker page-turners that have also had literary chops. Very telling. One that give him the sense that he's never read anything quite like this before, and he tries to write those kinds of books. He writes all his first drafts with a pencil in notebooks. Whoa, atavistic. Often outside. When not writing, he enjoys time with his family and friends in his native Vermont, fishing, hiking, foraging for edible mushrooms, and, of course, reading. Welcome to the program, Eric.
Thank you so much for having me on. I'm very excited about this.
Yeah, very interesting stuff, Eric. And really, quite honestly, that first paragraph, Eric, you read it so great, by the way. You really should do some voiceover work the way you read that, Eric Olsen. But hey.
I scared myself.
You did scare yourself. I could hear you. Your teeth almost chattering over there. But this is a continuation, this book, of a series of them. And the thing that's always grabbed me in this book in particular is the characters. They're so vivid. They're creepily vivid, Eric. How do you do that and not creep yourself out while you're writing?
Well, sometimes I do creep myself out when I'm writing them. I'll get done and be kind of winded and look around and be like, wow, I hope no one was watching while I was writing that. Or I'll, sometimes I write with my wife across the table from me and be like, let's go for a walk. I need to clear my head a little bit. This was intense, or I'll get to a point where I read it or have someone read it back to me like you just did and think that's pretty creepy. How did I manage to come up with that? And it's just immersing myself in the moment. I never know what I'm going to write.
Sure.
That's the type of writer I am. So
it's just spontaneous.
Sometimes I do creep myself out.
It's just spontaneous creatism is oftentimes, in my opinion, the best, where there is no plan, where you just let your own mind tell the tale instead of you'll want to have A, B, C, and D.
Yeah, I've never done A, B, C, and D. I've never done the plotting. That's not the way I've ever worked. And like you said, I do write everything longhand with a pencil and a notebook first, and there's something about that I really like, and I think it goes along with the way I write, that I don't plot, I don't outline, and when Frank Rath or another character knocks on a door, I don't know who's going to be behind that door. I don't know what they're going to encounter, and I don't know what the place is going to look like or feel like or smell like, and I don't know if they're going to get out of there okay or not. And that's part of the fun, and I think it lends toward the I was at a bookstore earlier this afternoon talking to a book club, and they were saying it felt very immersive, and that's how I feel when I'm writing them. Is I feel present and I feel immersed in the scene, and that's sort of the way I go about it.
And that's sort of like what you do is so important, not just to the to the fiction genre. Like I think people don't think of crime fiction type books as being quite the same thing in the same genre as what I do, which is, working with criminals in prison systems. But I mean, how do you think that people get interested in this? It's because of reading what writers and other, very creative people put on the page and put on the screen. It's reading those characters and trying to get into their heads. That's how I get interested in crime and why I studied it the way I did. I mean, how did you get interested in the idea of writing about even fictional crime?
Well, there were several ways into that. One was just the love of reading early on, and I always was drawn to, I read, the basic kids' mysteries, Encyclopedia Brown or, those things, but I also had a real taste for, like the darker Roald Dahl stories and novels, and, Edgar Allan Poe early on, and, junior high reading, Telltale Heart, and being, floored by those types of stories. And then there were other things that happened along the way. I was up in this remote area of Vermont that I write about as a younger kid, and encountered a couple guys who wanted myself at 14 and my cousin off their property now. And they weren't messing around, and there was no one around to help us. We were kids out of our element, and these were men in their 40s and 60s and with shotguns, and they were not like just let's scare the kids off our property. They were very serious. And this was in the midst of a beautiful, bucolic, idyllic place that I loved because it was beautiful, and I've always written about that since that time. It was very jarring because there was no one there. They could have, anything could have happened and no one would have heard anything or known what happened to us. And my mind just sort of unspools that way. Mm-hmm. And so I've always been interested since then in the sort of beautiful elements of the area I write about and up against crime that can happen anywhere at any time.
Beautiful danger.
Yeah, yeah.
The places you would least expect danger to be lurking. Somewhere beautiful and heartwarming, and you would just never think that that's where spring from. Yeah, I get it, man. I totally get it, because there's something to, what was I watching the other day? I was watching the TV show Misery, the movie Misery, with my wife. Mm-hmm. And she goes, "Oh my God, it's so scary because he's so secluded."
Right.
And I said, "Yeah, that's the biggest boogeyman is the distance between him and anyone else to save him." Although she's nuts and she's bat
right. There's
crazy.
All of that, but there's that element too.
And it's always there. It's ever present. Yeah. That's the one thing that's ever present.
And it reminds me too of like Fargo. All I keep coming back to that line at the end where she's like, "And here it is, a beautiful day."
Yeah.
And I'm driving you to prison because you've done these horrendous things, and here it is. It's this beautiful day.
Yep.
And you could be doing anything with this day right now. And because of what you chose to do, here I am driving you to be booked for horrendous crimes. I love that kind of dichotomy, that contrast. And I think it goes to the lore of and the legends of, crime and the gothic element, and the outdoors can play a role in that too. It can take people off guard.
Yes, it can.
What is it? All three of us at once. What is it about, from a fictional standpoint, the allure of crime? I was trying to think about this for myself. I haven't written any novels, but I have written stories, and I find myself drawn toward kind of a combination, kind of a supernatural, crimey type thing. It seems to be my kind of sweet spot. And so I'm thinking, okay, so what is it about this that I find appealing? It's not the crime itself, because that's a horrible thing. That's people being awful to people. So what's the underlying, and there's elements of the solving of it, obviously the mystery, there's the psychological, emotional, and intellectual aspect of that. And and then just people being awful to people. I mean, sadly, is one of the most fundamental aspects of human nature. So of course there's that too. But I don't want to put words in your mouth. What is it for you, kind of at a really fundamental level, that is appealing and makes you want to spend? This is your job. Spend your life doing this.
Yeah. I think it is a combination of those things, and like you were saying, the psychological part and the intellectual part and the emotional part of being able to sort of, a lot of us, I think we wanted to, it's about also, how does one arrive at this point? How does one arrive at the perpetrating these violent acts? Is it nature? Is it nurture? Is it the genetic? Is it stress from childhood? Is it poverty? Is it, there's so many factors. So I think that's part of the draw too, is how does a person arrive at doing these things, but also the sense that, like with the horror genre, you can read about it in a novel, or you can watch a movie that includes these certain violent acts, but feel like you're safe from it. Do you think that you're you're not part of it, and you can be frightened and all of those things, but that somehow it affirms or confirms that you're safe, and that's not gonna happen to me.
Eric, I was going to say it's danger from afar, right? That's what we...
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like the horror movie you go see, or the book, the great book, the names of the dead girls you read. It's that danger from afar.
One.
Yeah, that great one that we're talking about tonight, but it's still that danger from afar. You can experience the danger in your own mind without actually putting yourself in peril.
Right. And, with my novels, I try to, examine those things and also the repercussions of the violence and the crime and how they ripple through small towns. And it's, it's a real affront. It's a real betrayal, for someone to do these things, particularly in a small community, particularly if the person who perpetrated the crime is known in the community and has been formally trusted by the others in the community and known and maybe even respected, or, or not. Some characters that are pretty insidious too.
Well, I got to ask you, though, Eric, what was your inspiration for Frank Rath, the detective?
So, writing the way I do, so organically, I had this image for the longest time of someone pulling some sort of dead body over a beam with a rope, and I didn't know what was on the other end of the rope. And I didn't know if, ended up it's a deer that he shot, and then it turned into, well, who is the guy pulling the rope? And that's just the way things developed for me.
Yeah.
And as I wrote that scene, his backstory just came to me, and there's a scene early on in the Silent Girls where he's driving to the scene of this car that's been abandoned by a missing teenage girl. And he starts to think about all the crimes that happen in rural Vermont. It's very serious, violent crimes. And this theme that I work with constantly is that, these things happen in these places. We often hear all the time when a violent crime happens in rural America, there's always the person justifiably that says to the media, this isn't supposed to happen here. This is doubly shocking because things just like this don't happen here. And Frank Rath, as he's driving, is thinking, that's what people think, but going through the list of violent crimes that have happened in just the rural area he's lived in the last 10 years, and no one really seems to know outside the state that these things can happen. And then one of the crimes he's sort of going through in his head is this crime that happened 20 years ago, and it's this vicious murder of this woman and her husband while their baby was asleep, and they were both killed while the baby was asleep. And then there's this punch where it's, and it was his sister. And that sort of struck me as much as it would strike a reader reading it for the first time.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I didn't know that.
It almost seems
that's a serious backstory, So, and then he just did those characters. He and Sonia Test and the others. They just really take on a life of their own.
I was just going to say that we've had a lot of novelists on that have said, these characters. I would not be shocked at all to meet them on the street. That's how real they are in my mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, they get so fleshed out in your mind that they are now that they're to that point where they're writing the book and you're just writing the words down for them. It's almost like a dictation.
Yeah, it is. It's almost like I'm just a witness in a room at a certain point where
it's received. You're receiving it. It's passing through.
Yeah.
You're a conduit.
Yeah. And I've been working on some other books and want to get back to this series, and I'll get back to it as soon as I'm done with the one I'm working on now. And I was telling some people earlier, and it feels like those characters are there, and right now their lives are very boring, and they're waiting for me to come back so that they can get off their butts and off the couch and have something happen in their lives that makes their lives worthwhile.
They're in the bunker.
They're like, come on, let's go open some doors, Eric. Let's go knock on some doors. Let's go find where the trouble is, and pick up the pace here, because right now things are pretty boring. We need you back.
Yeah, well, yeah, it was funny because I was getting ready for the show, of course, and reading everything, and then I saw your picture, and I was expecting a guy in a 3-piece suit that looks very serious. No, you're a ball cap wearing guy just like I am. Yeah, you know what I mean? So, it really speaks to creativity. You can't pin it down to one person, because a lot of the novelists I've met in the past, and they're great novelists, are that suit-wearing type of person. Where you're like I am. I mean, you look like someone that could live in my town, to be honest with you, wearing a ball cap and just enjoying life. So, do you think that maybe that way of thinking, that that more relaxed way of living life, that obviously you are, because ball cap guys are great, and I'm one of them. Do you think that writing comes easier when you do a freestyle, because you're able to not be so worried about the A, B, C, and D, and just say, hey, I don't have to live up to any expectations other than my own? And that gets back to, just being cool.
Well, it works for me. I can't speak for anyone else, but that's, and I trust the process, and I write a lot of really bad pages to get to where I have the polished draft, but I trust the process that, I may have to write a lot of pages that don't get used, and end up in the book, but they're what I needed to write to arrive at the place I next needed to be in the book.
And the reason why I brought that up, because the writing style that you do is not really stuffy. I mean, it flows perfect. I mean, and that's why I was thinking, wow, I thought in the back of my head, this guy writes from his heart, and he doesn't really have, that's just where it comes from, is the passion. And that really shines through, I guess, was the point I was trying to make, as well as it shines through in the pages. It really does.
Oh, well, thanks. Yeah, that's where I try to write from, from the center of things and outward, and it really starts with me with the characters, and then, the sentences themselves, and trying to get as much across with as few words as possible, and just the right words, and the precise image that, that's more than just a pretty image, but it sort of reflects on the character's mindset, or some other relevant part of the book, rather than just being a pretty backdrop.
Well, Eric, when did you start writing? That's really something we haven't touched on yet. When did you start forming yourself as a writer?
So this goes way back. This goes back to grade school too. Second, third, fourth grade, where I was reading, Danny Champion of the World by Roald Dahl, and a lot of other Encyclopedia Brown, and some Judy Blume and Ray Bradbury, and Alfred Hitchcock's old short story collections that he did. That came out 30 years before my childhood, but I read them, and I loved that. Those dark, creepy, weird stories, and I started to write them, and then also listening to, some of Springsteen's albums and his storytelling, some albums that came out, that my older sisters and her boyfriends listened to,
sure.
Born to Run, and listening to those, but they were dark too, and lyrical and kind of romantic, and so all of those combination things, and then Poe. When I read, I wanted to keep reading, as we readers do. The people that have the reading bug, you want to just read more and more. But I also was struck with this feeling like I want to know how they did that.
Yeah.
I want to know why I'm shaking after reading this book. How you can string together words in a particular order, and you can scare me. You can make me laugh. You can make me sad. You can make me excited. You can make me angry. You can make me think. How did they do that? How did they string a bunch of words together and make me see pictures in my head and feel things? And it was just a big magic trick, big magic act.
Well, I'm glad you brought up.
I wanted to figure out how to do it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up Poe, because we actually recently did a show that did a big docudrama on PBS, would be Buried Alive writer, the writer of Poe, Edgar Allan Poe, is real life, and we have Eric Stange on. He's the guy that made the film, and he was really fleshing Poe out, and we had no idea I didn't anyway. He was the originator of the crime drama.
Yeah, he was, and the Purloined Letter and Imp of the Perverse, and all of those stories where he was the first to invent a detective story with the Purloined Letter and some of the other ones. And I studied him a lot in college at UVM with a Gothic seminar and a class called Poe's Children, and the whole lineage of the Gothic novel and the Gothic short story, and Poe being sort of one of the very first of detective fiction and horror fiction too. And followed those classes follow the lineage all the way up through to the present day, and his influence is everywhere.
I was going to say, isn't it amazing his influence even today? I mean, without Poe, we potentially wouldn't have an Eric Rickstad, or we wouldn't have a Stephen King, or we wouldn't have a lot of people.
Well, even more importantly, we wouldn't have him. Let's
not
talk about.
Let's not get
or a fear of rabies carrying cats.
Right.
That is true too. You have to have a healthy fear of that. The cat thing. But that notwithstanding,
rabies. Oh, a horrible way to go.
Rabies. Rabies, schmabies. Don't worry about it. A couple shots to your stomach, you're done. Don't worry.
What's interesting about Poe, though, like his personal life, when you look at that and how do you mesh with that, Eric? I mean, because Poe had a very conflictual personal life, too. You know what I mean? Like, he wrote about very edgy things, but he himself was also very edgy. And, I mean, you were talking about some of your life does not seem, I guess, that chaotic.
No, I mean, his life was pretty chaotic, and his life, with the
battling with other writers,
marrying of the cousin. Yeah, marrying his cousin.
He was very contentious. It seems.
Yeah, like you want to take on Longfellow, which turned out to be the wrong move, buddy.
Yeah.
But it's like it just seems like you have it sounds like you have a very good, calm sort of life. So, like, what place does this have in it? Writing about such, I guess, horrible. I mean, scary things.
Yeah. Well, I've always, I've a wide breadth of types of stories, but scary stories have always been, ones that I was drawn to very, very early on and continue to like. And I feel, that whole sense of, there is a horror element in some of my novels. I feel a Gothic element. And, I've always loved to tell stories too, and tell sort of the darker stories, with sometimes an edge of humor and sort of, the idea of a campfire story that's 400 pages long, but write it in a way that you can't put it down. You have to keep reading because every chapter is its own little tight little story that's just a little piece of what's happening, and you have to read the next chapter. You really are compelled to read it, just like sitting around a campfire, when someone's telling that story around the campfire, and your face is all orange from the flames, and there's smoke in people's eyes, and everything is dark around you. You're ringed by total blackness, and the storyteller's telling the story, and it leads up to this moment, and then he's like, I'm going to go grab another beer. I'll be right back, and leaves the circle of light.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, what the hell? Get back here.
Exactly.
You can't stop now.
But
and then he's gone for a little too long. You're like, where is he?
We have to do the exact thing. We have to run the break.
I've always loved doing that, whether it's telling stories or writing them.
Yeah.
And I used to get in trouble for telling them, so I figured out that it's funny, you can tell them and get in trouble because people don't know if you're lying or not, or
Sure.
If you write them down, people will actually you'll be somewhat respected, and people will seek you out and buy them from you.
Sure. We have to run a break. The author is Eric Rickstad. The book is The Names of the Dead Girls. Check it out while we go to break over there. Amazon right now. If you're a big Amazon shopper, it's right there for you too. Or you can go to your Bear bookstores or any bookstore really to get it. But we'll be right back with more Eric Rickstad. Don't go anywhere. Otherwise, he'll come scare you tonight. He'll tell you a really scary story and stuff. So be right back right with this. After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. We'll be right back after a word from these sponsors.
Northern Tool and Equipment.
I got a rather serious problem over here.
All right, what are we looking at?
Cranky mother-in-law asleep on the couch in the man cave.
Dear God.
It gets worse.
That's impossible.
She's passed out on the remote.
I stand corrected.
What do I do?
Okay, I want you to grab a Torrin Big Red hydraulic bottle jack.
Okay.
Now you wedge that bad boy in under your mother-in-law and crank her up skyward.
It's working. And got the remote.
Great. Now grab that Torrin Big Red 2-ton folding shop crane and put that woman on wheels.
And away we go.
There's no problem a little horsepower can't solve. Northern Tool and Equipment.
This is Jen McGowan, founder of Wayward Souls Promotions, a company dedicated to helping individuals, teams, radio shows, and others that are seeking exposure for their individual events, conventions, and shows. We offer a wide variety of advertising, such as web-based article, social media posts, podcast advertisement, and so on. Contact us at paranormalpromotion@gmail.com, visit us on Facebook at Wayward Souls Promotions, and visit our website at www.waywardsoulspromotions.com.
Welcome back to After Hours AM, the Criminal Code. And welcome back to After Hours AM, everybody. I'm your host, Joel Sturgis. Right along with me,
Eric Olsen and
Dr. Clarissa Cole.
And we are having a great discussion with Eric Rickstad, and he is the author of the new book, The Names of the Dead Girls. Great stuff. It's a continuation, though, so you want to get all the books. I recommend that. Get all the books, get caught up. And when we were leaving, we were just kind of talking about his influences and how Edgar Allan Poe actually influenced Eric as well, along with a lot of other people. But I know during the break, Eric had a great thought that maybe Dr. Cole should take the reins for a minute and let's talk about the serial killer aspect of writers and how freaky crazy they can really be and how maybe the real deal doesn't quite live up.
Yeah, I really do want to get that out there for people that get into the field of criminology and doing what I do. Don't expect to meet people like you read in books and that you see on television, because I was saying that I have such a great respect for writers of any of those genres, because they're taking all of the most sinister pieces and working them into one adept personality that has all of the forethought and premeditation of a very intelligent person that can plan out whole scenarios. And typically speaking, and I'm talking serial killers here, that is not what you see.
Really? They're not like
no,
Hannibal Lecter, where they show up, they go, "We smelled you, Clarissa."
No. It's even some of the most planned serial killers, they're grabbing victims of opportunity, and they make many, many, many mistakes. At least the ones that I am meeting, because they're in prison, right?
Well, that's true. They're really good at it. They'd be on the street. You're right.
Exactly right. You're going to meet them on the street. But no, I would say that the killer in this book, there was one person that I have met in my dealings in prison, but only one that was, I think, very much like this. And they are the type of people that when they look at you, give you that tingle sort of down your spine for no real discernible reason. Like you feel like they're reading your thoughts a little bit. And, what it comes down to is that they're reading your behavior, because any good, I guess, success, I don't know what to say,
Predator?
serial killer, picking a victim, they can read a person based on your behaviors.
That's predatory behavior, though. I mean, that's just picking the weak, right?
Not just picking the weak, but picking who they, not always. I mean, there are some killers out there that want to take down someone strong because they want a challenge, for lack of a better term.
Man, you would think that they won't live very long doing that, but okay.
It's very, very rare. You're right on the fact that picking the weak or picking those who won't be missed, picking people that don't have street smarts or survival skills, but there are those killers occasionally that are looking to take down somebody that they also sort of respect in a similar way, which is what writers tend to write about. Am I right with that?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Well, Ned Preacher in this book,
yes,
and all of them. I mean, this guy is
pick him apart.
Yeah, I mean, my gosh, you wrote him to perfection to where I was going, oh my lord. And
I love it. I love the laser focus on things, and it's so rare that I actually do see that in real life. But does it happen? Sure, absolutely, especially like with stalkers.
I'm thinking, can you get into just a little bit, quite specifically, this person as he is presented? We're reading his mind as he is coming out of prison, which he has cleverly planned for so that he got a light sentence. He's now out. He's now thinking about what he's going to do next, his revenge, the freedom, and all of that. How true to reality? How true to not just a serial killer, but a person? I love that presentation that Eric presents of this guy just feeling the world is his oyster, man. He's out and he's going to do what he wants to do, and he loves doing nothing better than torturing and killing people. Ha ha ha. So there.
Do I think that is possible? Absolutely. I think that what is so unique about the character of Preacher is that there is a level of self-control there that typically, I guess, is not seen. Which is what I like so much about those characters, though. It's what I liked so much about way back in the day, Edgar Allan Poe, too. You have a villain or a nemesis that, even though the world is their oyster, there is a modicum of self-control, that they're waiting for the right time to get the victim that they want.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
And is that hard to write? I mean, do you ever feel like, okay, this is a weird question, forgive me. Do you ever feel like Preacher just wants to go on a rampage and you're holding him back?
Yeah, well, that's part of the tension and suspense that you can build, and that's part of the pacing in the book and the suspense and the mounting, continuously mounting dread is that you feel like he's going to strike, that he's going to act out at any moment in that he can just barely contain himself, but that he almost takes pleasure in containing himself, in the idea that when he's speaking one-on-one with Rath, in the interrogation room when they have him in for a visit, that he could do anything at any moment, and he almost takes pleasure in others knowing that, and others being so afraid of him that he likes to continue that fear rather than act on it and make it almost so that it's almost unbearable, and tease, and do those types of things that are psychologically traumatizing to people. Part of what he's doing in this novel is it's not really about physical violence. It's about manipulation, and it's about, sort of psychologically torturing Frank Rath for quite a while.
But for every great hero, we need an equally great villain.
Mm-hmm. No, it's true, right? You need that balancing act, but gosh, that's so rare. But it does happen. I will say that. Like I said, there was one person that I knew at San Quentin that was a bit like Preacher with the sort of emotional, the psychological provocativeness, where you felt as though he could do almost anything, like, because he was so self-controlled. I mean, that's a very unique thing. I mean, you very much captured that. So how do you capture that in Preacher without actually knowing people like that? You know what I mean? How do you dream them up?
That's a good question. It's really almost like any other character. And as a writer, I just try to think, not necessarily to be in the mind of the killer, but as the writer, what can I do in this scene? One that doesn't feel like you've read it before. As a reader, because I don't want that. So, and two, how can I make the suspense and that dread and as intense as possible? And it becomes this challenge to make what's happening between Preacher and Rath in that room, or Preacher and someone else, a mind game and a puzzle that's being, put together one piece at a time, and you don't know what the puzzle's going to look like, and he keeps baiting Rath, so he's playing to Rath's core sensitivities and core weaknesses, involving Rath's daughter, and I just think of ways that he can get under Rath's skin, and Rath can't do anything about it in that room. Rath wants to try to use the legal system at all costs to get this guy to screw up so that he can get him back in prison for breaking parole. So Rath has to contain himself too. So they're both having to control themselves, because what Rath wants to do is reach across the table and strangle Preacher, to kill Preacher. That's what his base instincts are telling him to do, and that's what the reader wants him to do in a way. You feel like you also want Rath to act out on and defend himself and protect his daughter, so that they're kind of going back and forth, and the more they control themselves, almost, the more intense the suspense and the dread gets, because you're waiting for one of them to break, because you as the reader almost want that relief too. You want one of them to act out so that the tension can be broken, and the longer you can go without that, the better. Like the whole story, Poe's story, Cask of Amontillado, it's about the killer leading his victim into the underground of France, leading him to this great bottle of Amontillado that he's got, and he's using the guy's weakness for wine, for fancy, expensive, rare wines to lure him down in there. And as the reader, he's going to kill this guy. And the whole time, the whole build-up is where the suspense is. And then he finally, walls the guy up alive behind a bunch of bricks. But you're almost you're almost waiting for it to happen. You can't wait for it to happen so you can get some relief almost. Like it
the
becomes
crescendo
so intense.
has to happen. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But one
or
thing,
the telltale heart, where
oh God, that was the genius.
he sees the eye and he's like, says, it wasn't him, it wasn't the old man, it was his eye. If he didn't have that eye that was looking at me, and he goes through how he planned it and plotted it, and it's almost a relief when he finally does kill this old man, and then the tension builds again when he's got him underneath the floorboards and the cops are there, and you don't know if they know, and he doesn't know, and his paranoia grows, and he's trying to control himself, right? He's kind of control himself not to kill the guy because of his eye, and then he's kind of to control himself not to give himself away, and both times he breaks down, and it's in that, but you want to prolong that as long as possible, I think, to build,
I agree, and I have a statement and a question, both. Number one, you did something that's hard, in my opinion, to pull off. You made Preacher self-controlled but unpredictable, and that's a hard character. That they normally don't go well together. You did it very well with him. Number two is when we talked about how Rath came about in your mind. How did Preacher get away? How was he born? What recess of your mind did he come from?
Well, he sort of came out of an outrage toward offenders like him. Obviously he's dramatized and he's singular to me, but this idea that, there are criminals that game the system. And the system itself, to me, has many flaws, as any system made by humans will. But, you see these news reports of violent crimes, almost always against women or girls. And whether it's, a sexual violence or it's murder, one of the next things you usually often hear in the news report is that this person has done it before.
Yeah.
This person has raped and hurt people since they were 16.
Yeah.
And they've been convicted 3 times for it, and now they're 48 years old, and they've done it again. And, their previous sentences of 10 to 25 years, they served 8 years for being a good boy. And to me, even plea bargains for certain criminals is an unjust thing, that someone can commit first-degree planned murder and aggravated rape and plead down to, third-degree homicide and, some other lesser assault charge to save the state money and time. You're basically saying, you save us money and time, and we'll find you guilty through a plea of a crime lesser than the one you actually committed.
Let's make a deal.
If you save us money and time, you get off a lot better.
Yeah.
And it's like, what? So to me, Preacher came from the personification of all these outrages I have toward this type of person who horrendously violent, out of control in public, against the public, committing crimes that are serious, life-altering for the victims and their families and friends and communities, and then get in prison and do all the little things you're supposed to do.
Yeah, become the
now,
model
the most
citizen.
criminals aren't like this, but there are select few that they know once they're inside, okay, I'll sign up for workshop, and I'll sign up for the literacy program, and I'll do this, and I'll do that, and I'll do everything I possibly can to lessen my sentence and get out as early as I can for good behavior.
Man, that's the entire.
And they get out and they do it all. They do all of this just so they can get out and continue their criminal life. With no, and so those things, I thought, these are the things that upset me and outrage me. So I know enough to know that other people are outraged by these things as well. And if I can write the personification of this and then dramatize it too, so that he's an embodiment of these things, it was very easy to run with.
Hey, Eric, a bit of trivia for you. I'm part of a unit that is the only unit in the entire United States that actually does evaluations on these guys, just like Preacher, before they get out, so that we can evaluate the deeper psychological roots of things instead of just a bunch of parole board members saying, "Oh, look, they took all the classes they were supposed to."
Yeah.
Big girl.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's a pilot.
I'm
pilot
making
unit.
it. Yeah, and I'm making it, black and black and white, and make it, much more cut and dry in the novel for novelistic purposes. There's a lot of gradations in there, and there's a lot of reasons people commit the crimes they do. But to intensify it for dramatic purposes, you make it this particular. I'm glad to hear that, though. I'm glad to hear there's.
Well, but I guess that's the point, is that you're not wrong. In 49 states out of 50, these guys are not evaluated. If they take the classes that the board wants them to, they can get out.
Right. And it happens.
Man, there's something wrong with that system.
It happens all the
far
time.
Too often. It happens
Far
all the
too
time.
often.
You see it on the news, and then the next bit of the bio or the story is, previously, arrested for, aggravated assault or rape, of a 16-year-old girl in, 1994, and then in 1998, and then in 2006, and, at what point does society say you're not allowed out?
Yeah, you're irredeemable.
Not,
Yeah, it doesn't matter how many classes you take. I mean, that's the thing, is that people that sit on parole boards, people don't realize this, but I think it's almost every state, they're appointed by the governor. And, some of them have correctional experience, in some capacity, but a lot of them, maybe they were a lawyer at some point, that maybe they did some criminal law, maybe they didn't. I mean, they don't get to know these guys or their prison histories very well.
Sure.
And so that was kind of the entire point of why my unit was set up, was to go in there and really dig into.
And they don't know how manipulative they can be.
Right, exactly, because they're not going through the whole history.
I once interviewed a writer that wrote a few cool books, and you may, getting back to Stephen King, I actually interviewed him a long time ago. It was a book had just come out called Everything's Eventual. And it's a whole big, anthology of short stories. And I asked him, well, how does what you write compare to real life? And he said something very poignant to me in the interview. He said, I could write a horror story a day, scare people every day, and I'll never scratch the surface of what real life is, how terrifying that is. Right.
And I think that's one thing I try to do, and I can't do it, but I try to get to that point where, too much of the violence and read about and see is just tossed off, and that, when you think about, it's like, if someone were just come up and punch you in the face and break your nose, how much that would hurt physically,
and how much it impacts your life, and the emotional and psychological.
But then you think of all these other things that are done to people, just the physical damage and pain. Never mind that, and so I try to work with in some of that where these are people that this is being done to, and this is they're serious psychological, lifelong. When someone is a victim to a violent crime, the trajectory of their life is changed.
You're absolutely correct. It is, and
they're never going to know exactly how their life would have gone if this hadn't happened to them.
Yeah,
and they could do, and so I mean that's he's absolutely correct that to me, they can be really scary and provoking and make you think or feel, but to be an actual victim, you can't imagine it. You'd have to experience it to know it.
And TV and movies, even now, they're a lot more realistic, certainly, than they used to be. But even now, people get beaten on and punched. You see these long, drawn-out fights where they're hitting each other over the head and punching each other and kneeing each other. And they come out with barely a scratch. Yeah, ooh, that was a tough one. Yeah, no way. You'd be dead.
Yeah.
But but the way you tell the story and the way you craft the story is very impactful, Eric. Very
No, thank you.
impactful. And you know, I get it. You know, no writer, and every writer we've ever talked to says, you know, that does true crime or does scary stuff says, hey, you know, I cannot begin to emulate the real scary horrors of life. Okay, we cannot do that. But you tell it and you craft it in such a way that you're almost, in a way, you're rooting for the good guy. But God, that bad guy is really interesting to read about.
Yeah,
and that is that delicate tightrope that I found anyway when I was reading The Names of the Dead Girls by, of course, Eric Rickstad, that you guys will find. I mean, it's that delicate catwalk that we all want, that high wire act that you just don't know how it's going to end. You just don't want it to end.
Yeah, I work hard to do that. That's what I like. I like to read. I mean, you know, who doesn't love a page turner where, you know, the book's in your head when you're not reading, the book's still in your head, and you're cooking breakfast, or you're trying to get the kids off to school, and it's just worming around in there in the back of your head, you know, and you can't wait to get back to it. You can't, you know, it's you miss it when you're not reading it, and I've always loved that in books, and you know, so work hard to create those books that I like to read, and I know, you know, other people like to read, but that also, when you put them down, they resonate, and they keep kind of resonating with you for a while. You don't put them down, and, you know, the second you close the book and they're done,
it festers in the back of your head.
Forget about it.
Yeah,
you know,
it festers. It takes root in the back of your head, and that's that's the mark of a great storyteller and a great writer, is to provoke that after the fact thinking.
Yeah, I like to do that, so I'm glad, you know, you feel it's successful, so that's what I strive to do.
Masterfully
is leave that ringing and sort of like that tuning fork. I want you to have that vibrating, resonating feeling afterward, like it's done, but it doesn't feel like it's done. I'm not done with the book's not done with me. I may be done with the book, but the book's not done with me.
Yeah, and again,
part of that's the literary aspect. I think the Poe analogies. You know, I mean, sure, he's Poe, but I think that's apt. In other words, yours is not pulpy. You know, you're a literary writer, and you reach different levels, and you also have a lot of subtlety that aren't in more pulpy writers. And I found that very appealing, because one of the things, I don't know, part of it's my age maybe, whereas if I'm going to take the time to read something, I want it to be, I don't want it to be purely just entertaining. I want it to be meaty and meaningful as well. And I think you also achieve that, and I admire that very much, because that's a tough combination, to be really entertaining and fun and a page turner and literary, thought-provoking, using words carefully.
Yeah, well, we only have about a minute left. I hate to cut everyone off here. We only have a minute left, and boy, did it ever fly. So why don't you tell them where they can get their own copy of The Names of the Dead Girls?
You can get it at any bookstore, Barnes & Noble, independent bookstores, on Amazon.com, on IndieBound.com. You can get it pretty much anywhere, you know, books are sold.
Very, very
cool. How can people get a hold of you?
Yeah.
How can people get a hold of me? On Twitter at Eric Rickstad, just my first and last name, and on my website, which is just rickstad.com, and I'm also on Facebook. I'm not on Instagram or Pinterest or the others.
Me neither. I don't waste my time with any of that stuff. No, I'm kidding. But, yeah, Facebook, get a hold of them. Get a hold of them via Twitter. But definitely pick up your copy of The Names of the Dead Girls. You're going to love it. And it's a continuation, guys, so make sure you get all the books. Read it all. Get the backstories. Get the whole meal deal there. You're not going to regret it at all. But until next time, guys, take care of each other, love each other, and talk to you guys again tomorrow night when we talk about, well, we got some artsy stuff to talk about, art of horror. So you're going to love that. Until next time, take care of each other, love each other, and read The Names of the Dead Girls.